Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Heather, and on this channel we like to walk a very fine line between a shopping addicted makeup monster and a responsible adult with a makeup hobby. Now, I really enjoy eyeshadow singles, duochromes, blush, highlight, lip gloss, basically everything except pressed glitter, and today we're going to be doing the eyeshadow palette tag 5000. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, stick with me, we're getting into it right now. Now this tag definitely, so the tag I think was started by Chic, Geek. Which I'll make sure her information is linked below, but the tag really started to take hold after I was already trying to pack for my trip. So I was like, well, this is gonna have to be on the return to-do list, right? And I thought about the answers to this particular prompt while I was out on vacation. So I didn't actually have any of my palettes available to me to kind of look through them, which I think made it a little bit more interesting to think about, right? Because if you didn't come to the forefront of my mind, then you must not be the most important palette to talk about. But to that end, I have several beautiful palettes here, and I can't wait to tell you about them. The first palette to talk about is a palette that was for your special occasion, and I picked out the Tarte Bloom palette. Now this palette I picked out because number one, it's the palette that I wore on my wedding. So with the Tarte palette, obviously lots of like soft kind of neutrally colors, right? Obviously I had a huge interest in this particular metallic because it's one of the most beaten up in the palette, but I also used this particular palette on my honeymoon, as well as the e.l.f. Mad for Matte 2, and I took some of the Stila Glitter and Glows. Like, that's how long ago my honeymoon was. But this palette holds a special place in my heart because of that. I don't know what I just did. I probably just broke my stuff. Anyway, all right, the next palette up is a palette that you love, but it's repetitive. And I picked out this palette. This is the NYX Ultimate Utopia. This was a gift from my husband. He walked us into Ulta one day and was like, just buy some stuff. And so this is what I picked out. I was really, really excited to try this palette out. And I do really like it. I think it's a nice quality. Even the shimmers in here, like these shimmers are so like super metallic and buttery. It's such a nice palette to use. But there are definitely some redundant shades, right? Like you've got these kind of pinky tones. You've got these very neutrally browns. I mean, there's just a lot of like similarity that on the eye I don't think you're going to be able to tell a difference in. So for me, I think it could have been a little bit smaller had they taken out some of those redundant shades. All right, palette that you got your money's worth out of. This one was hard for me because I don't really like pan palettes at all, and I have a huge collection. But the palette that I picked out was the Strange and Unusual palette by Bella Beauté Bar, and it's because I had like a passion for this palette last year that I was using it constantly. And I figured, you know, if I'm going to talk about a palette that I got my money's worth out of, it should be a palette that I was using a ton. And I wanted to pick out something that was a little bit more current because the last palette that I used that heavily was my chocolate bar palette from back in like 2016. So this was kind of the next thought in my mind. Palette you think is an amazing deal. So for this one, I picked out the It's Belle Cool Summer palette. I think this originally retailed for like almost $45, and then shipping was like another $10, so that made it like 50 bucks. And then at one point it went on sale and it was half price. It was like 20 bucks because they were moving. The owners were moving. So I went ahead and picked it up then, and shortly thereafter it went down to down to $9.99, and so a bunch of people got to pick this palette up for $9.99, which I thought was a really impressive thing because it is really, really pretty, and because it has all these beautiful duochrome type shades in it. So for me, this one really struck me as that good deal kind of palette because it went on such a significant sale at one point. All right, quad you love but wish it was bigger. I don't have a lot of quads, so let's start there. The quads that I have like 3 Colourpop quads, and most of those are already represented in larger color stories, even within Colourpop's own collection. I have a Makeup by Mario quad, and I have this one. So this is the one that I picked out. This is the Copacetic quad, and this came out in December of 21, maybe? It was one of their like subscription quad boxes, and I thought this was a really pretty color story. You've got this really gorgeous blue to purple duochrome, which you can see that kind of flips, and it's very flaky. You've got a beautiful blue with a little bit of purple duochrome flip to it, a matte purple, and then this iridescent white shade that has flecks of blue and purple in it. This was their Year of the Ox palette, and the shades are Ailment, True Calling, Compromise, and Workaholic. I think this would make a gorgeous like 10 pan, 12 pan, 16 pan, something like that. So that's the palette that I picked. All right, palette that you love the quality but hate the packaging. What I hate is this stupid plastic that you have to pull out. This little plastic here is the only thing that actually holds the palette closed, and I think that is so cheap. It could not have been that expensive to use a magnet, but I think the shades inside are actually really pretty, so I bought it and I use it anyway, despite that ridiculous packaging flaw, because I think the shades inside are pretty. But I hate this packaging, and I don't really care about E.T. the movie. I just don't. Now, dream palette in singles. So this is the part where everything kind of broke down, right? Because everybody's like, I'm not sharing my intellectual property with everybody on the internet. And I get it, like I get that. And so I was like, no, I'll make a dream palette because I think that would be a lot of fun. I sat down with all of my singles, which is this basket here, all of these ginormous palettes. They hold about 120 shadows a piece. And I started looking through them and started trying to put some color stories together. And I put color stories together that I thought were pretty, but was it like my end-all be-all dream palette? No. And so I got kind of stifled because I was like, I don't know if I have necessarily one dream palette to present to you. So I didn't want to be disingenuous and present something that is not truly a dream palette for me. So that one I'm skipping, but not because I have some special intellectual property to avoid sharing with you. It's because I don't know. And then the next question is the palette that you like to combine together. Now, I am not a big combo person when it comes to like I don't have a go-to palette duo that I love to mix together. I will mix together whatever the heck I feel like mixing together depending on the colors that I'm looking for. So I didn't have like a go-to classic for this one, and obviously I didn't want to just say like my whole collection, right? So what I chose out was all of my multi-chrome shades because I feel like those are something that I mix consistently with my palettes. So I'll show you just a couple of examples. I have the Dragon Fruit palette from Clionadh. This is a bunch of Clionadh shades. This is my original collection of Clionadh shades. This is the expansion of shades I purchased at the last sale. This one has some Terra Moon, Glam Shop. I've got all kinds of stuff in here. One touch of Glam shade. And then over here is some Shine by SD and more Glam Shop shades. This magnetic palette from Adept holds my Divina 9 pans of their sugar drops. I've got the Carnival collection. I've got some, what else do I have in here? I have the original Duality collection from Shine by SD in here. I have some copacetic singles in here. So I've got a lot of different like sparkly, shimmery, toppery type shades, and I love to mix those in with my regular palettes, but I don't necessarily have two palettes that I always like to marry together. All right. Then next up is the larger palette that you wish was smaller, and I picked out the bPerfect Carnival Interstellar palette because I think this is a gorgeous, gorgeous palette. But if they had made all the shades like half the size, then the palette could have been like half as big as it is. So I don't think they necessarily needed to edit down the actual color story, but I think if they had used smaller pans, it would have made for a smaller and more affordable palette. So that's the reason why I picked this one out, but I otherwise really, really like it. And then palette you wish had a matching face palette. This one was tough for me because a lot of what I was picking initially was just purely based on the packaging, because I wanted another palette that had the same packaging, like Lunar Beauty Moonspell Volume 1 and 2. I could have picked out the Hella palette from Odin's Eye, the Jewels and Gems palette from Odin's Eye. There were so many palettes that I picked just because I love the packaging and I wanted another thing like it. And then I decided to pick this out, which is the Or Kid You Not from Colourpop. And the reason I picked this out is because I thought Colourpop could benefit from doing a face palette that is, number one, better on deeper skin tones, and number two, had these kind of orchid berry like purple tones rather than being more like red based maroon type tones. And I thought the opportunity for some highlighters with this particular color story would have been really nice as well. It doesn't hurt that the packaging is pretty too. Like, I think this was pretty for their plastic packaging series, but I thought this would be a more interesting answer for you guys. Alright, and with that said, that is everything for this video. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe before you go, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!